Hello, everybody. It is me again, Pacific, and today I wanted to talk about Hong Kong. And the reason I wanted to talk about Hong Kong is I've given a lot of videos favoring Hong Kong, but now I can say I've lived here for an entire year, and I will try to keep it brief. People ask me all the time, why do you love Hong Kong? I love it because of the food, the ethnic diversity, the energy of so many people and humans moving about all over the place. The transportation system is wonderful. The buildings, there's so much eye candy and stuff to see. It is unbelievable. The mountains that jut up behind the skyscrapers, the islands, the ocean, the ships, all of that. But I wouldn't be objective if I didn't come back with a video talking about the not so finer points of Hong Kong. In 1 year, I have learned that Hong Kong really is a sad city. The god of this city is money, the Hong Kong dollar. Finance is king here. It is Asia's world city, and banking and finance is quite center stage. Unfortunately, most of the people here chase the almighty dollar and will stoop at nothing to get it. The amount of greed that goes on in Hong Kong is beyond my own imagination. I find that the culture here is quite greedy. I find in the Chinese culture in Hong Kong that they will get their money or else. I find that when you haggle in the markets, you're not getting a deal. They've marked it up so much that they're dropping it down to what they know they can drop it down to and still make a pretty profit. I find the Chinese women to be very unladylike. They look like ladies, they dress like ladies, but they will bash and smash into you and refuse to move out of the way of me, a foreign man, or many others. I find most of the Hong Kong women to be very immature, very feminized, and very much I'm going to exert my right even if it goes against the rights and manners of other people. I cannot tell you how many times in a day, whether it is on a public bus, a tram, an overbridge, or in the crowds, that I am knocked out of the way by Chinese females and or Chinese males. I don't know why it is such a culture of rude here, but it definitely exists. And in talking with other Chinese, Filipina, Indonesian, European, Australian, and United States and Canadian expats, they all concur that it is a problem. Many times I have been walking with a lady on my arm, two of us, and they will not move for us at all. They'll walk 4 and 5 wide, Chinese women, taking pigeon steps at a time, texting on their phones, nobody moves, and they will slam into my shoulder. Not a excuse me, goi sai, nothing. I find the Chinese women very hard to get to know, and I have found them to be less than desirable the more time I spend with them. I find the expats that are here, many of them, especially the women, to be very stuck up, conceited, materialistic, and chasing bags and bags of junk at high-priced malls and shopping centers. Walk into some of your average stores that the expats shop in, and the upper-end Hong Kongians shop in, like City Super, and you will pay high prices for a tiny wafer-thin box of cookies that are organic, imported from Ireland. While billions of people around the globe starve, Hong Kong people have no shame in wasting so much money on such utter, expensive, ridiculous foolishness that will in no way enhance, better, or add longevity to their life any more than what I am doing on a cheap shoestring budget of eating natural and healthy foods that I prepare, other than my 1 day of going to a restaurant or 1 time of the day going to a restaurant to eat lunch. I find a lot of the expats get to Hong Kong, and Hong Kong living, Hong Kong salary, and all the perks that come with the companies that they get go straight to their head. An average expat coming to Hong Kong can get the following: $6,500 a month rent, free, provided by the company. Private schooling for their children, free, provided by the company. The hiring and payment of a Filipino driver and a domestic helper, free. The flying to and from their country of origin 3 times a year, entire family, free. Moving all their household goods, dogs and children, to and from beginning of job and end of job or end of contract, free. Not to mention many other perks. And the average expat will pay their domestic helper less than they pay their 2 dogs for the 2 dogs' food and accoutrements in 1 month. Pretty disgusting. It is hard to look at Hong Kong in a positive light when there's so much Vanity Fair afloat, when most of the expats are known for their binging and drinking of consuming of alcoholic beverages on a weekly basis. One only needs to go to Soho to watch the foolish behavior of so-called professional adults by day, acting like morons by night and blowing thousands of Hong Kong dollars in an evening on liqueur. It is interesting to watch that there's not much substance to Hong Kong of any certainly eternal value. Even the gods of the Chinese seem to take a back seat to the almighty dollar and the pursuit of money. Said one Chinese woman to a friend of mine, "I don't believe in your God, I believe in the God of money. If you don't have money, you don't have friends." And many Chinese women have told me to my face, "No money, no honey." Many of the Chinese women in Hong Kong only go after a foreign man or another man for the money. Stupid, that's it. I find that they are not looking for love, but looking for a wallet and a secure lifestyle. I find many of the Chinese to be devoid of love, passion, and color. I find them to be harsh, cruel, and quite mean. I have heard story after story just in 1 year, and more so in the last 2 weeks, meeting personal friends of mine who had to end their contracts due to physical abuse. One employer fired her domestic helper because she dressed better and looked better than her, and comments were made in the public arenas saying, "Oh, is that your domestic helper?" referring to the boss, not the helper. I have found the Chinese culture many times to be very abrasive. I find the men here to be just as insecure as most Western men in my culture, walking with their suits and ties and not moving for anybody and slamming into people. It is amazing the level of rudeness here. The Chinese forget often that we're bringing money to this economy too. And if they don't want us foreigners here, maybe they ought to put a ban on us and shut us out altogether. Otherwise, they need to learn to adapt and stop being so utterly, disgustingly rude and pushing us around. This morning I went to get on a tram. I was waiting in line, and an older Chinese woman shoved her butt right into me as hard as she could, and I couldn't believe it. I've gotten to the point now where I won't put up with it. I stepped right back in front of her, blocked her way, and said, "Excuse me." I cannot respect a culture that is so obnoxious. I find that when I am walking with a Filipina on my arm, that the Chinese will stare and glare, specifically the women, and give dirty looks. Not sure what they're thinking. I don't know if they're thinking she's a prostitute or what. These are just my friends. I find that they're not interested in me, so what's their problem if I have a date with a woman who actually is kind to me? I find the Chinese women to be very judgmental. Very, very rude. When I'm on a tram and some people are having a lively conversation, they don't like it. But when they're yelling and shouting, it's okay. I find many times holding the doors open for the women or the men in this culture, you don't get a ngoy sai or a thank you. I find an attitude in Hong Kong, and to quote a woman who is Chinese, who befriended me, told me herself, many people think that Hong Kong has an attitude, and it does. It does. Walk through any place with your luggage, trying to get through, trying to be polite, they won't let you through. They'll step in your way and block your way and bash into you, and it's amazing. And then when your suitcase runs over their foot, then they're yelling at you. I find the air pollution here to be horrible. When I ride the ferry to Lantau every day, the diesel smoke that hangs in the air from all the ships and ferries and helicopters and Macau ferries is appalling. I love ships in the ocean, but this is the first time I've noticed so much diesel spewing into the air, and there's a lot of it. The traffic in Hong Kong is tough. I'm a professional driver in the U.S. I would not want to drive here. The taxi cabs are some of the worst offenders. The high-ace minivans, as well as the minibus drivers, are the most dangerous on the road. Not sure why the Hong Kong police doesn't crack down on that. Just yesterday, a taxi cab hit a center divider, flipped upside down, killing one of the occupants in the vehicle. The taxi drivers are aggressive. They will run over pedestrians. They have run over pedestrians. They will go at excessive speeds in tightly packed, crowded city streets with no sidewalks, laying on the horn with their angry Chinese man look on their face, gripping the steering wheel with not 1 ounce of compassion, care, or kindness coming out of their countenance. And I want to say something about the Chinese ladies. I don't understand why they're so abrupt. They look so sweet in the face, but when you get closer, they're not smiling and they look hard. So many Chinese women are so utterly beautiful, but when you get close, you see they're not smiling, and their eyes don't have the light on inside them. When you're in a culture that chases the dollar, you're going to lose compassion. You're going to lose kindness. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I have seen kindness and manners here. But I also see a lot of rudeness, and it just is hard for me to grasp. A lot of the Western women, and specifically the Australian women that come here, they wear their Hong Kong all over their sleeve, and yet they still want to park their Australian culture right in the middle of an Asian freeway. I find them to be offensive, and I've seen them push and shove the Asians out of the way because they're big. They use their size and they use their might and they throw their weight around and their Australian accent around. It is disgusting. I've commented on this in other videos, but there is a dynamic here. Hong Kong can be exciting with all of the cultures. You go to Chim Cha Choi and you have India and Pakistan, and you've got all the different nations literally represented in every part of Hong Kong. It's exciting. You have to have an open mind. I find some things very wonderful about this culture, but I find some things also a detriment. It's pretty sad when an American guy will get up and let a Chinese older woman sit down on a tram, but some of the young Chinese males that think they're cool won't even budge. I've seen that over and over again. I find that Hong Kong is a tough place. If you've got a job here, then you can keep your wits about you and remember what's important. This can be a great city. But if your God is money and not the God of heaven, if your God is stepping on others to get ahead and shoving everybody out of the way thinking you're more superior or more important than them, then that's not a city that's worth writing anything good about. I love Hong Kong, and I love its culture. But I find that it has a very strong culture of rude and a very strong culture of greed. And I find that more often than not, the only smiling I get from the Chinese ladies is when I'm spending money in their stall. If you don't spend money, they have no use for you. These are just my comments on Hong Kong. Read in the paper this morning that two Chinese siblings got into an argument in a taxi cab. One ordered the taxi cab to stop on an expressway overbridge, and she jumped out of the cab and jumped to her death. When the Chinese deal with their stress, they don't deal with it. They open the high-rise window and jump out and say, "Goodbye, cruel world." That includes students who get a failing grade or a less than exemplary grade on a college test, or somebody who gets a demotion at work. There's something wrong with a culture that doesn't allow people to make mistakes and fail, and they feel that the only way out is suicide. The more time I spend with the Chinese culture, the more I see its dark awfulness, and it will be good to go home in March. I don't want to be around people that chase money. I don't want to be around people that don't know how to smile. I don't want to be around people who think that I'm not worth 10 cents to them and shove me out of their way. No, thank you. And I have to chuckle. I have been very open-minded, but after spending a year here, Hong Kong needs an attitude adjustment. And maybe the best thing that could happen to Hong Kong is the same thing that's happened to Japan and other places around the world. They've never had a big earthquake. They've never had a tsunami. And they've never had a major disaster that I know of. And maybe the best thing that could happen is a little shaking could go on over here and remind people of what really is important. Priorities. It's about God and it's about people. It's not about money and it's not about materialism. And when billions of people are suffering around the globe in poverty, and rich expats can go buy at a place like City Super extremely marked up foods, something's wrong. When you can go into IFC Mall and Ocean Terminal and spend gargantuan sums of money on name brand stuff that doesn't give you any more advantage over anybody else, longevity or healthier living, it is amazing the Vanity Fair. It is amazing the amounts of money wasted on consumer goods that you're paying for a name. That's just my opinion, for whatever it's worth. And just because you get to live and work in Hong Kong doesn't mean you have arrived. It's amazing how shallow people's minds are. And though I've enjoyed Hong Kong on many fronts, I've also had to be objective about its darker side. Hong Kong's loaded with cockroaches and rats, and I love it here, but it's not always very clean. You get in the back streets and the back alleys in Sheung-wan, and it's dirty and greasy and grimy and gross. But that's what makes Hong Kong, and that's why I love it. I don't want it to be sterilized and homogenized like America has become. But at the same time, as Asia's world city, it needs to realize the entire world watches this city. And most people around the world want to experience this city. And to the Chinese women and men, I have a message to you. Try to be a little nicer to us. We may just be tourists in your eyes, but we are spending our money in your country. If you don't like us, make a rule and keep us all out. Try to be a little kinder to us. You're not superior to me, and nobody's superior to anybody. And a message to the Chinese, you are not superior to the Filipino population. I hate to inform you of that, but the Chinese are not more superior than the Philippines, in my opinion. One of the things that's been communicated to me over and over and over again is how the Chinese look down on the Filipinas and the Indonesian and the domestic helper. I'd like them to show me where it is written that the Chinese are the superior race. They're not. No race is. It was encouraging the other day. I believe it was the store D&G, the Italian store in Chim Cha Choi, had a specific race of man standing out there as a security guard threatening to take and smash cameras of anybody who took pictures of the outside of the store. I was glad to see that the people protested that. And I was glad to see that one ethnic minority man in Hong Kong had to be shown that he cannot act like Los Angeles ghetto culture in Hong Kong. I'm glad to see that the Chinese didn't bow to that. I applaud them for it. I wish the United States would learn the same lesson instead of having white flight. When the Chinese set their minds to doing something, they can do something impressive. I'd like to see Hong Kong change some of its attitude. It is a great city. But remember, Chinese, God can take everything away from you in an instant. This city can fail, and this city, according to Revelation, will eventually fall. There was an earthquake so great that the cities of the nations fell. Yes, that's prophecy. And that predates 5,000-year-old Chinese history. So far, the Bible prophecies have all been proved, and it will happen again. And all these skyscrapers and everything that I'm sitting in the middle of right now will all come crashing to the ground. New York, Tokyo, Seoul, Manila, Hong Kong, Beijing, they'll all come down to the ground. We're all going to die one day, and the only thing that matters is whether we have a relationship with God. And I realize that not everybody believes in the God I believe in. That is your own choice, and that is your own loss. But He does exist, and He is coming back one day. To Hong Kong, that's all I have to say. This is Pacific signing off. Have a wonderful day.